70,000 people stood in a freezing, muddy field in Portugal. It was October 13th, 1917. The crowd was a tense mixture of devout believers, cynical journalists, and government officials. They had all come for the exact same reason: to see if 3 illiterate peasant children were telling the truth, or if they were about to be exposed in the greatest hoax in history. 5 months earlier, 3 young shepherds, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, made an impossible claim. They said a woman brighter than the sun had appeared to them in a pasture. She told them to return to that exact spot on the 13th of every month. At the time, Portugal's government was fiercely secular. Religion was openly mocked in the press. Authorities interrogated the children, threatened them, and even threw them in jail to force a confession. But the children never changed their story. Instead, 10-year-old Lucia made a public promise. On October 13th, the lady would perform a miracle so that all may believe. Word spread across the country like wildfire. By the morning of October 13th, tens of thousands had flooded the remote, open field. The conditions were miserable. A torrential downpour had turned the ground into a swamp. People were soaked to the bone, shivering, and covered in deep mud. Reporters from the biggest secular newspapers stood in the freezing rain, notebooks ready. They were waiting for noon to pass. They were waiting for nothing to happen so they could finally crush this religious hysteria. Noon arrived. The rain kept falling. The crowd grew restless. Then, Lucia looked out at the massive sea of people and shouted, "Close your umbrellas!" Almost instantly, the rain stopped. The thick, dark clouds fractured and parted, and the sky opened up. The sun broke through, but witnesses said it didn't look like the sun. Even the skeptical journalists described it as a spinning disk of dull silver that you could look directly at without hurting your eyes. Then it began to move. It spun rapidly, throwing massive waves of yellow, blue, and violet light across the landscape and the stunned faces of the crowd. Suddenly, the sun appeared to tear itself from the sky. It plunged in a chaotic zigzag directly toward the earth. Panic erupted. Thousands of people dropped to their knees in the mud, screaming, covering their faces, believing the world was ending. And then, it stopped. The sun retreated to its normal place in the sky. The blinding, brilliant daylight returned. The crowd slowly opened their eyes, gasping for breath. The screaming faded into a heavy, bewildered silence. But as people stood up, they noticed something else, something impossible. The deep mud they had been kneeling in was completely dry. Their clothes, which had been soaked by hours of freezing rain just minutes before, were completely dry. The secular reporters who had come to write an obituary for the faith instead went back to their desks and wrote front-page articles trying to explain the unexplainable. To this day, critics argue over the science of what happened. But 70,000 people knew what they saw. The sky had fallen, and 3 children had kept their promise.